UFC Fight Island 7. We have a return to the UFC. Welcome to the 2021 campaign, man. We got number 1 ranked Max Holloway facing off against the Boston finisher, number 6 ranked Calvin Kattar, fighting at featherweight, 145 pounds. But you know what I need to do first. I need to introduce my co-host, AJ. How are you living, bro? Happy New Year. Happy all that stuff, man. Nice to see you.
Man, it's nice to see you too, Derek. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everyone watching. Man, it's good to be back. That's all I got to say, and I'm super excited to be sitting right here with you.
Right on, man. It is definitely good to be back. I'll tell you what, it's been a long 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks or whatever without the fights. I'll tell you, basketball is cool, football is cool, but I've been missing the fight game, man. So I want to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the episode, folks. I do want to let you know, we are accountable here. We do our head-to-heads here, but we're going to start over for the new year. So the competition in 2020, AJ went 20-17-1. I went 19-18-1. So he got me, man. He got me on this one. I'll give him the victory lap, all that good stuff. But we about to get after it for real, a whole entire year because we didn't even really start doing all that stuff until the last couple months and whatnot. So we got that covered. And then we do want to give you a heads up. This episode, we're covering Fight Island number 7. Now, there's a lot of events coming up in this next week. So the event happening on Wednesday, which will be Fight Island number 8 for Michael Chiesa and Neil Magny, we will not be covering that one, but we'll be right back on Friday for Poirier versus McGregor number 2. We got to catch that at Fight Island number 9. So with all that housekeeping, enough said, man. We'll get to the good stuff. Don't forget, give us a follow on Twitter at AFC Fight Talks and, Portland Free Thinkers Club, all the good stuff. You know where to go. All of it will be in the show notes below. But now that we've handled all of the nonsense, all of the, paperwork and all that good stuff, man, we got some sleepers because that's what we do here. And AJ, man, since you won the head-to-head, I'm going to let you go first, man. What's your first sleeper of the 2021 campaign?
Hey, thank you very much, Derek. And my first sleeper leading us off for this year is David Zawada versus Ramazan Emeev. Now, personally, I'm very excited for this fight, and I'm looking forward to it because both of these two fighters are rather experienced, but they need to start stringing some wins together and actually spectacular wins to actually get noticed in the 170-pound division, which is a little flimsy to say the least. It's up in the air. There's so many fights, different ways, and 2 belts with the BMF belt, so who knows? But anyway, both Zawada and Emeev, they've been fighting for a long time and really need to push to make an actual name for themselves in what is, like I said, a flooded class. I mean, there is a reason Dana has them on the main card, and they're both 4 and 5 fights in. They need to feel that heat coming from him, and hopefully they'll deliver an amazing fight. I'm pretty excited. What about yours, Derek? What's your first?
Right on, man. So you know how I like to do it. I'm going to start off my first sleeper with some big boys, man. Spectacular fashion. So I got Brazil's Carlos Felipe's facing off against Justin Tafa. Like I said, heavyweight, 265, man. And the reason why this is a sleeper to me is because, first off, we got a southpaw in Tafa facing off against an orthodox fighter in Felipe. Both of these fighters have combined for 10 knockouts in their total 16 fights. Felipe got 6 of them. Tafa got the other 4. Listen, ultimately, Tafa is going to be the first southpaw that Felipe ever is going to face. And I'm always really interested to see those types of bouts, especially when you got heavy leather flying in those airs, man. You got a different mental fortitude that you need to bring to the fight, and really adding fuel to the fire, man. Felipe, his last win was against Yorgan De Castro, who was 8-1, and he served Justin Tafa his first career knockout loss back in 2019. So you got to think there's a psychological edge there. These are 2 prospects that are both 1-1 in the UFC, so this is make or break it. So that's why this is a sleeper, and that is why you should tune into this prelim bout. What you got next, AJ?
Next up for me, Derek, I got Nasruddin Imavov versus Phil Hawes. Now, these are 2 highly touted fighters, especially Hawes coming off a huge KO. Imavov, he's also an animal, okay? And we already know Hawes can deliver, so really the only question for me is how long is this fight going to last? And with that being the question, that's why it's a sleeper, man. It could last very long with Imavov dragging him into deep waters, or it could be a very short night with Hawes landing that big power shot. Either way, I'm very excited for it. I think it's going to be a good one. What's your second?
All right, man, I got 2 fighters that nobody knows about. This is a flyweight competition here. Wu Yanan facing off against Jocelyn Edwards, who is making her UFC debut. So the reason why this is a sleeper fight to me is because I really think that the Chinese fighters in the UFC are underrepresented. I don't think that people give them enough love, and I honestly believe part of it is because they have names that are tough to pronounce. I really believe that. It sucks that that's the way it is. But so this is very much for the same reason that I call Tyler Santos versus Jillian Roberts a sleeper fight. Listen, man. Wu Yanan and Jocelyn Edwards, they both have 7 knockouts and 5 knockouts respectively, which is something you simply just don't see in women's MMA very, very often, man. So these fighters are ready to swing some heavy leather around once again, but they're small. So that's what's beautiful about it. And the primary difference that we have here, man, is Wu Yanan can piece you up while walking backwards, countering. She's long, she's tall for her weight class. She's 5'8", and at a 66-inch reach. You know what I'm saying? As a flyweight. But ultimately, Jocelyn Edwards likes to walk forward and throw big hooks at you to get you out of there, man. She has real deal power. Like I said, she got 5 knockouts. So it's a matter of you got a counter striker who's a knockout puncher, and then you got someone who's willing to walk forward and really get after it, man. So that is why this is really, really a good sleeper that you need to watch out for. What you got next, AJ?
Man, next up, my final sleeper of the night, my boy Dusko Todorovic and Punahele Soriano. And like I said, I really like Dusko, and he's back at it again with coming off an impressive win against Daquan Townsend, who's a very big stud in the 185-pound class. And his opponent, Puna, he's no stranger to the first-round knockout. All right, now this is going to be a real big fight, real fast, and this is going to be one of those fights that the casual fan is really going to be interested in because it's 2 dudes looking to take each other's head off and leave with a $50K bonus. For me, it's a potential fight of the night, but we're going to see where that comes. What about you, Derek? What's your final one?
All right, man. So this is one that's going to be on the main card, just like the one that you just talked about, right? So I'm going to go real brief on this one, but I need to let you folks know, man, I got an Argentinian versus a Chinese man here, and I'm really excited for this one. But most people, this is only going to be a sleeper for basically the casual MMA fans of the world, because if you're really into the fight scene, that you would completely understand that both of these fighters have been on a tear recently. So we got 2 welterweights, Santiago Ponzinibbio facing off against the Leech, Li Jingliang, man. And Santiago Ponzinibbio is 5-0 in his last 5 bouts. And what makes him really interesting to me is he handles pressure really well, and he could flip that pressure on his opponents with his footwork, with his head movement, with his combinations, with his feints. He's a technician, man, and he's had to deal with a lot of outside of the ring stuff, which has kept him from being here. Now Li Jingliang, he is just a one-hitter quitter type of dude, man. He could put anybody out. He's fighting out of China top team. He got 8 knockouts, man. This is going to be a crazy fight. Ponzinibbio was knocking on the door to a title just 2 years ago. So I'm going to break this down really a lot more later on in the episode, but just understand, man, if there's any of the fights that you need to watch for the main card, and this is going to be a sleeper, this is one of them for sure. This is an amazing card. So that is my last sleeper, AJ, and I guess you know what time it is, man. We're going to get into some main card picks, but we starting off with the sleeper that you just talked about, right? So we got 2 185ers, man, and I'm really excited for this matchup. I was really hyped to talk to you about this. And Punahele Storytime Soriano, I don't know how he got the nickname, but I love it, versus Dusko Thunder Todorovic, man. So I think we need to bring a little context to this bout before, going any further, man. So these are 2 big punchers who both historically fight like this, hands down, chin up. You know what I'm saying? These dudes will knock your face off, knock your socks off, do all of that. But the defense is a little, there's stuff to, ask for a little bit more. We need a little bit more of that, man. So I wanted to ask you this, man. Due to, both of these being big strikers, low defense, is there any way this fight doesn't end in a knockout? And if so, how do you see this fight playing out?
Man, I think this is why Dana White wanted to lead this fight off on the main card. Starting us off big, bad, and in a hurry. Now, I want to take a little second, real quick, Derek. And Puna got that nickname Storytime because he'll read you a story before he puts you to bed. He's banging, man. He comes, and why I like him a lot is because he throws that old school heat. And like you said, he doesn't mind keeping the hands down, throwing big looping shots to land him hard and heavy, but his technique is there and he can throw crisp shots. Now, same thing with Dusko. We saw it in the Townsend fight. If he starts getting pieced up, he's going to have to go to his wrestling, and he does because he starts to leave his hands down a little low, but they're improving. I personally think there's no way around a KO in this one, especially because you have all that anxiety of the first fight of the year. You want to make a big impression. And with all the fights and all the potential coming that the rest of UFC has, it's going to be hard not to want to impress and get that early finish and get that $50K. What do you think?
Well, first off, man, I need to just put this out there. I thought it was really, really surprising that Soriano was even on this main card because his last fight, he was on the first fight of the early prelim. So that's the literally the first fight of the night. It's like not even televised unless you have UFC Fight Pass, and he got a knockout, first round knockout against Oscar Piechota. So that was really telling. You get bumped right back up into the main card, and I think pressure is going to be something that might get to Soriano, but he's hungry, man, and he's ready to get down. Now, this is what I see happening. I think these are two knockout punchers, obviously, but because of the lack of defense, I think that this is going to end up a lot of clinch work, man. So if it's not a knockout, you know what I mean? It's going to be like, if you're familiar with watching Dusko's, his Dana White Contender Series fight, I'm forgetting his name. I think it's Teddy Ash is who he fought, but it was basically he just clinched him up against the cage and was just, dirty boxing the whole entire fight. Now, what's dangerous is that Soriano, guess what? That's how he won his last fight, or that's how he almost knocked out Piechota, is with hooks out of the clinch. He ended up just bombing on him some big hooks after, but I think the clinch is going, I love the clinch, man. I think the clinch is where the majority of the transactions are going to take place. So yeah, that's what I got on that one, man. But I did want to note, I'm really high on Dusko because he has a first round knockout finish over Michel Paeta. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did, man. I did. Dusko, coming up, man, he has a lot of big names and really impressive fights on him, and he comes highly touted. That's why I'm actually a big fan of Dusko too, man.
Yeah, so listen, man, I already talked about the clinch and all that good stuff, man. I want to know now, like, the actual, icing on the cake with it. If you had to choose legitimately, right, like, let's just say, all right, it sucks, we want to see a big knockout, but they're going to clinch it up. Who do you think is more effective? Who's scarier? If you were in that cage, who would you be more afraid of being the third man in the cage?
Oh, man, to be honest, it'd be Puna. It'd be Puna Soriano, because he's thick, and don't get me wrong, Dusko's a big boy too. He used to fight a little bit heavier, so he comes with a big frame.
Yeah.
But man, Puna, he really impressed me with the power that he was able to generate just on, like you said, in that short clinch work, because he almost put Piechota to sleep, and it was a couple times. And he's one of those 185ers that barely has to touch you, and he's gonna do some damage. That, and he's coming from the island, I think it's either Samoa or Hawaii, so I think the power is going to be with the Islanders on Saturday night, Derek.
Well, at the end of the day, man, someone is going to lose their O, because Soriano is 7-0, 1-0 in the UFC, and Todorovic is 10-0, 1-0 in the UFC. But what's interesting about Todorovic is he actually went 10-0 in his amateur career as well, so he has a lot of experience, and he finishes at a 90% clip. So ultimately, I guess it comes down to this. Both of these fighters have only gone the distance once in their respective careers, man. So that's 2 decisions in a total of 17 professional career fights. Who is going to have the better third round if it gets there, in your opinion?
Oh, man, if it gets there, I definitely think the nod goes to Dusko. He's just a little more experienced. He's not as, like I said before, thick. He's not as big. I mean, it's definitely, you're going to see, I think last fight with Dusko and Townsend, he made him a little, I'm sorry, was it Townsend?
Yeah, Townsend.
He made it a little, you can see he was just appropriate size, whereas Puna Healy was, man, really big in his last fight. And I think a lot of it has to do with the legs, too. Not only that, he's going to get tired carrying around all of that weight, whereas Dusko's still able to also improve, where he showed a little bit of improvement last time, and actually, like I said, improve on that and bring that head movement that he was lacking and that little bit of style and flash. And we'll see. I think the third round, definitely Dusko gets the nod. What about you?
Well, you know what, man? I'd have to agree with you, partly because, like you said, the frame. Soriano got tree trunks for legs, man. Like, this dude is jacked, and he fights very flat-footed, which is, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just depends on your fight style. But his whole entire game plan, how he got the knockout, was to walk forward, throw big hooks with no regard to his chin, man. And so that's why I think if it goes into the third round, Dusko is a little more precise on his shots. Personally, that's how I feel. But ultimately, man, I guess we got to give our picks at this point. And listen, man, I'm going to go Dusko. And the reason why is, once again, the experience. But it's also the frame, man. He's got a couple of inches in terms of reach and height. So he's like 2 inches taller and got 2 inches on his reach. And it's a game of inches. They say that about football, but that's MMA as well, man. It's a game of inches. It's a game of timing. It's a game of seconds. So I'm going Dusko, and I do think it's going to be a knockout, man. So I'm going KO round 2. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Derek, this is one of those fights where I think it's anybody's punch lands and anybody's going to sleep. Personally, though, I got Puna with the first round KO knockout.
Interesting. And folks, man, just so you know, the open for the betting, Soriano's plus 130 underdog, Todorovic minus 165 favorite. So it's not that crazy. You know, this is getting closer to a pick'em as the week ends. So, all right, man, let's get into the next one. So we got number 2, New Monza, Joaquin Buckley, the talk of the town, man. He's facing off against Alicio Manzo de Chirico. And so we got American versus an Italian, man. We got a dude who's generated a lot of buzz over a viral knockout. But I kind of want to get your opinion on this real quick, man. So to set the table, we know what there is to know about Joaquin Buckley pretty much at this point, right? If we look back at his last 5, they've gone as such: knockout win round 2, knockout win round 2, knockout loss round 3, knockout win round 2, and knockout win round 1. It's an incredible tear considering that all of those knockouts, those 4 knockout wins, were all in the LFA and the UFC. And we've said before on this program that the UFC is where knockout streaks, they end. You know what I'm saying? You can't translate that in a big show, right? Now, by knowing that, like, do you think that Joaquin Buckley's style is tailored to go the distance? Because it feels like part luck, part skill, but he's finishing everybody. If he has to just win decisions, you know, as it gets tougher, you start trying to compete for championships, it's not always going to be a knockout. Watching him, do you think that his style is suited for that, you know, the long game?
It's funny you bring that up, Derek, because I think that is probably the biggest hole Buckley has besides his aggression, because he'll just see red and start swinging for the fences like he did with Holland. And also to that point, Holland dragged him into deep waters, wasted that gas tank, and just dropped a nice little sneaker on him. But that fight was also a late notice. I think it was like a week out, weight class up where Buckley usually likes to fight. And it was just not really in the cards for Buckley. If I remember it correctly, it was a catch weight that they did, but I could be wrong on that one.
I think that was actually a standard 185, but Buckley, he's not a 185er. Dude came into the weigh-ins at like 180, had to chug a body armor just to be able to like put some weight on.
182, so, yeah. It was a late notice fight for sure. I just couldn't remember. I remember there being a weight issue, and that's only because Buckley, he likes to be big, likes to carry all that weight, doesn't like to cut, and that leads to a hard or very short gas tank, I guess. And I mean, if there's going to be a big hole, that's it to exploit. But I don't know if De Chirico, has that exactly killer instinct in him. What do you think?
Well, I mean, to be honest, man, so Joaquin Buckley, he noted that in De Chirico's last fight against Zach Cummings, his chin was compromised because literally at the last second of the fight, he got dropped, and it could have been a knockout fight. Dude was out on his feet, wobbly. I would feel a kind of way if I was Cummings, because I would want a little bonus or something from that knockout. But he said he's gonna capitalize on the compromised chin, man. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. For Alicio, man, there's nothing particularly that stands out to me in his game outside of his leg kicks, man. Dude got some nasty leg kicks, but he just kind of he went away from them versus Cummings. But Cummings is kind of a tricky fighter to fight. But listen, man, Alicio De Chirico, he is learning firsthand that the UFC is not interested in building up fights, man, or in building up prospects. You do that in LFA, Cage Warrior. You don't do that in the UFC, right? So, listen, man, he's on a 3-fight losing streak right now, and he has to beat Joaquin Buckley to potentially keep his job, to potentially not get cut, man. And I think this kind of goes hand in hand with the UFC saying, oh, we're cutting down on the roster, we're skimming down. I really believe this goes hand in hand, and the reason why is because it's like, all right, instead of just cutting people just for the sake of cutting people, instead of saying, whatever, man, you weren't, worth it in the UFC, we're going to say, you want a 3-fight losing streak? We're going to make it tough on you. We're going to give you a real prospect. And, it's just rough stuff, man. So I just had to put that out there. UFC is so ruthless, you know what I'm saying? But anyways, so De Chirico, he had trouble against Zach Cummings, who is a southpaw switch fighter, and guess what? You fight another switch fighter. He had most of his success when Cummings was fighting out of the orthodox stance. And listen, man, I just think it's going to be tough all around. I see very few paths to victory for De Chirico against Joaquin Buckley outside of miraculously taking him the distance, gassing him out and whatnot. But what paths to victory do you see for De Chirico? Do you think the ground game could work? He averages about a takedown a fight. So do you think the ground game, maybe? We haven't really seen Walkley been put on his butt and just kept there. You know what I'm saying? So what do you think?
I mean, you make a good point, Derek, and I actually agree with you 100%. I think De Chirico is actually completely outmatched and outskilled. Also momentum, he has a lot of factors going against him. And like you said, he really pissed off the UFC matchmakers by giving him one of the most highly touted people coming out of 2020 on his proverbial banhammer fight. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting to see. And I think that right there is the only shot that DeChirico has to success, is taking that mentality that everyone's after me, I'm against the ropes, I need to finish this right now, and taking the momentum of the dude who had, well, I'm pretty sure it got KO of the year. I could be mistaken, but one of the most spectacular KOs in recent memory. Yeah. So if he's able to actually come off a 3-fight losing streak to Kevin Holland, Muhammad, and Cummins, it's going to be very impressive to actually see him take Buckley's steam. Now, if that can happen, who knows? We'll see, because you know the pressure's there from the UFC at the very least. What do you think?
Well, listen, man, I think that anybody's got a puncher's chance when you step into the cage, and I think that's just about as far as it's going to go for Alicio. Listen, I don't want to hate, man. I wouldn't want to be there facing off against Buckley either. You know what I'm saying? It's just how his cards have played out, and we're starting to see, just because you have a lot of... He came in super hot into the UFC with 5 knockouts. He was on this huge tear, and then guess what happens? You know what I'm saying? The UFC, you fighting some big boys, man. It's just different. So who's your pick?
Like you said, Derek, the UFC is where streaks come to die. Yeah. Personally, though, I got Buckley KO round 1. I think it's going to be an easy fight for him. It's sad to say when there's an easy fight in the UFC, because you don't want to see somebody get beat up that bad. But I got Buckley KO round 1. What about you?
I'm actually going to go Buckley knockout round 2. I think DeChirico could survive round 1. And if you look at Buckley's record, you know, he comes on a little bit later, man. You know, it's mainly knockouts in the second round, third round. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I don't really have much else to say on this fight. So let's move on to the next one, man. So this is the one that was my sleeper, man. Welterweight, Santiago, the Argentine dagger, Ponzinibbio, versus Lee, the Leech, Jingliang, man. So I wanted to break this down just a little bit more. On paper, these are almost carbon copies of each other, which is kind of like what we're going to see in our main event. So both fighters are 6 foot. Jingliang, he's 71.5-inch reach, which is about 1.5 inches shorter than Ponzinibbio. Both orthodox. So Ponzinibbio's 9-2-0. Li Jingliang is 9-4-0. It's like literally, man, 8 knockouts, 15 knockouts. It's very similar between these two. But what's crazy is when you see them in the octagon, you're going to see they're not the same. These are not the same fighters, man. So I just want to real quick talk about just some accomplishments that we have here, right? So for Ponzinibbio, he went on a 7-fight win streak dating back to 2015, dude. Let me name off some of the people he's beat. Sean Strickland, Neil Magny, Mike Perry, Gunnar Nelson, Zach Cummings, and Court McGee. I mean, that's a championship resume if you ask me, man, you know, because Jingliang, he's no slouch neither. He's got wins over Diego Lima. Oh, let's not forget that guy, Diego Lima, man. That's an old-timer right there. David Zawada, who you talked about in your sleeper, and Elizeu Zaleski, man. So, like, it's just not the same. I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying? But basically, let's get into it, man. Both Santiago Ponzinibbio and Jingliang hold 2 knockout wins in the last 5, and they have a common opponent in Neil Magny, who's about to fight this Wednesday, right? Ponzinibbio is a heavy betting favorite. -325, while Jingliang is +235. Do you think a fighter coming off of a 2-year layoff should be this heavy of a favorite against a UFC vet who was just on a 3-fight win streak? You know what I mean? And like, let me actually give you one last piece of context. Ponzinibbio wasn't out just for, you know what I mean, for nonsense. He had like staph infection, blood infections and stuff like that. He had like real hospitalizations. Do you think he should be this heavy of a favorite?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with, like you said, that resume he carries, man. His hit list is deep, and a lot of those, he knocked out Gunnar Nelson round 1, knocked out Neil Magny round 4. Like, he can bang, and it was a crazy fight with him and Mike Perry. Now, like you said, 2 years off. What was he doing? Is he getting better? Was he improving? Was he just recovering? That's going to be the thing. And I think actually this leads a little better to Jingliang, because, like you said before, you alluded to it before, Derek, they're not Chinese fighters, and I can't remember if he's Mongolian or Chinese, but he's an Asian fighter of any descent doesn't get the respect they do, whether they're men or women. And I think this is a good time for Jingliang to actually take out a legitimate killer in Ponzinibbio, because, man, 2 years off and your name still carries that kind of clout. You were putting people out, man, and people really knew, especially, I think it lended a little bit that his name is kind of hard to say, or very long, but kind of easy to say. Ponzinibbio, it's like, it sticks in your mind, especially when he, like I said before, has that hit list. So what do you think?
Well, you know what, man? Neil Magny, when he fought Jing Liang in his last fight, Neil Magny was a heavy underdog because of the same reason. He had time off. So now I feel like they learned from their mistake and they're like, no, 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 no. We're going to make sure Ponzinibbio is a big favorite, man. But my thing is this. It's tough because if you listen to the wise words of Dominic Cruz, he says ring rust isn't real, man. You just get in there and you bang. And that's what he did. He proved it. You know, he straight up proved it. And that's why for me, I don't know what to think about ring rust, to be completely honest with you, because I'm not in there myself experiencing it. I don't have that firsthand experience. I can only go off of what the fighters say. But listen, man, I do think Ponzinibbio should be a huge favorite simply because of the clash of styles, the difference in technique between the two. So let me give you an example, man, which is basically leading into the next question. So for Ponzinibbio, man, technical striker, like I said earlier, likes to use 3-punch combinations. You know, he'll hit you with a left hook, a right cross, and then a leg kick, man. Like, he's one of those type of cats. Li Jingliang, I'm sorry, but he doesn't fight well off of his back foot, and he needs one punch to get you out of there. So he needs to be able to set his feet, cock the shot back, and get you out of there. And I just think due to the clash of styles, Ponzinibbio should be a huge favorite, and I will be betting on him for sure, man. So let me ask you this, though, because both of these fighters, they average about 4.5 strikes, significant strikes landed per minute. Do you think this is too good to be true in terms of like a pure striking contest? You know what I mean? Like, do you think we might get a performance similar to Ngannou versus Lewis, where they stood in the mirror the whole fight because they were so worried about the power from each other? Both of them can get each other out. They got knockouts up the wazoo, you know what I'm saying? So what do you expect? Because sometimes on paper, just because it looks amazing, doesn't mean it'll translate in real life.
Yeah, Derek, you're correct. We've seen a lot of those fights, like you mentioned before. Well, I actually don't think this one's going to be that way. I do think it'll end up being a lot of like clinch work, wrestling, trying to pushing each other around more so. I got this fight, I'll just say it right now, I got this one going to decision. But I really think that it's going to be more exciting than it is a lull. You know, Ponzinibbio has to get back out there to keep his name and actually keep that point, or not necessarily point striking, but those 3-piece combos coming, because they can really hurt. And the problem with Jing Liang, he, like you said, he touches you and you go to sleep. He's a big, heavy power for 170, and he's very kind of under-researched. Yeah. So a lot of people can underestimate him and kind of just blow him off as just another stepping stone, and then end up getting night. So it's gonna be exciting to see. I personally think it's gonna be exciting. I don't think it's gonna be a lull. With the battle in striking, it's not like a battle where it's a striker versus a wrestler, or a wrestler versus jiu-jitsu, where you kind of think they're going to just end up, somebody's going to get taken down. It's going to be boring from there. I think if they do, they're going to want to get back up and actually kind of want to land some strikes on each other and get the night out early.
Interesting, man. So listen, you got a decision win, but I'm actually going to go knockout round 3. And the reason why is because seeing how Neil Magny was able to really put a hurting on Jing Liang, man. Ponzinibbio did disgusting things to Magny, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like with that common opponent and seeing the way that Ponzinibbio was able to beat up Magny's legs, beat him up with the punches, I expect basically the same thing to happen to Jing Liang, especially because Magny is a volume striker and Jing Liang is just throwing big bombs at you. So it's like literally you got less to try to move and bob and weave. You don't even need to do all that. You just got to dodge the big punch, basically. You know what I'm saying? But no disrespect. You feel me?
No, you're correct. Arguably, there's a point that Liang got the better Neil Magny after a 2-year stretch with him, Neil fighting more people. But I mean, like you said, Jing Liang has proven to be a one-trick pony. Yeah. I didn't give my person before, and I'm gonna say it now. I got Ponzinibbio by decision because I think he just has more well-rounded skill set, and he's gonna have more tools in the toolbox to be able to put Jing Liang to sleep.
Yeah, I'm with you there, man. And I did kind of want to just clarify something you said earlier. Jing Liang is Chinese. He is the UFC's. He got signed. I think he's the first male Chinese fighter signed in 2014 to the UFC. So big time there, man, especially because he's been around for so long. It's like nobody knew about this dude. But okay, man, let's get into the co-main event, man. So I don't have too much to say about this simply because I don't think that this fight means much to the UFC. I think this is more just a legacy fight, man. So, listen, man, we got 170s again, man. I got Carlos, the natural-born killer Condit, facing off against Matt, the immortal Brown, man. So, it's like we got some real-deal legends in the building here. I'm going to be honest with you. Matt Brown should have retired in 2017 after he beat Diego Sanchez, to be completely real with you. And Carlos Condit just snapped his 5-fight losing streak against Court McGee, which was also a close fight, man. But Carlos looked sharp, man. So basically, this is really all I got. Carlos Condit, he has made a switch as of late, and that switch is to fight more southpaw. You know what I mean? In his last fight, he was almost exclusively southpaw, and that opened up that huge body kick that he loves to throw, right? So with that being said, man, he had a lot of success closing the distance and with the body shots and the southpaw and all that, man. But when you fight in your non-dominant stance, arguably the biggest dip in performance is your defense, just because you don't have the same reaction speed. You know what I mean? It's just not your instinct. You know what I mean? Like if you're an orthodox fighter, you have instincts that allow you to move certain ways. So with that being said, do you think that fighting out of southpaw would be smart against a fighter like Matt Brown, who his number one goal is to walk in front of you, grab you, and drop a elbow on you? You know what I'm saying? Like, do you think Carlos Condit should be fighting out the southpaw? How do you see this fight going?
I think it all depends on how much you train. I mean, you weren't just born standing right foot back. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Somebody eventually, when you were a kid, taught it to you. So doing that, especially, I know me personally, I think right hand's stronger, but my left leg's a lot stronger. Mm-hmm. So leading to that southpaw as a non-orthodox, as a non-natural southpaw, like you're saying with Carlos Condit, leads to a lot of pros and cons. Defense is one of them because it does come unnatural. Seeing punches come from the different stance is just a little unnatural for you. Mm-hmm. But that check right hook is one hell of a hit. So it leads to both rings, especially when Matt Brown is coming in and then Carlos Condit's able just to dip, roll to the left, lead that check hook hard, heavy. And it depends if he does have a nice straight left that can actually hurt, as well as that big left kick. It doesn't make you as defense heavy, I guess, is the big thing, because that is the one bad thing when you're used as a orthodox fighter. You're used to seeing right punches come, and it's easy just to move out of the way and roll with them. Whereas you do the opposite way, and you might just dip into a punch.
Yeah, so, man.
That's the flaws. But I think going with how much Carlos Condit has trained, and we saw the growth from Michael Chiesa to Court McGee, I think with that practice that he's put in and the timing going southpaw, I think it's more feasible than switching back and going, unless you get a one touch real hard and you want to just resort back to what you know and what's ingrained mentally. But if you're doing that, it's not going to be the best of nights for you. What about you? What do you think?
Well, I think that I think that he should have a lot of effectiveness out of it. My only concern is he going to pull a Diego Sanchez, throw that body kick, and then Matt Brown catches it, drops the elbow on him. That's what I'm saying. It's like Matt Brown, we saw in his last fight versus, why am I blanking on the name? Who did he just fight, Matt Brown?
Miguel Baeza. It wasn't the biggest names.
Yeah, it was a young hot prospect in Miguel Baeza, man. But what happened? We saw Brown almost knocked out Baeza, then Baeza almost knocked out Brown, and then Brown back again, and then Baeza ended up actually knocking out Brown, just because I do believe his chin is compromised, man. He don't have the same. He can't take that same, you know what I'm saying, that he could once upon a time. So ultimately, listen, man, I think that this fight is only happening because it would be too disrespectful to these legends to just outright cut them. I really believe that, and I think this is another version of what I said earlier, which is the UFC skimming down on their roster by just saying, like, all right, well, go fight each other, and loser goes home. You know what I'm saying? Like, loser leaves town type match, So, in all honesty, man, we got a couple of old guys here, not old in life, but old in the sport, and I just hope that this goes to a decision. I hope nobody gets hurt, and I hope that even though these two both live for violence, I want to see longevity in their post-fight careers. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to go Condit decision, and the reason why is because I think he's going to be able to stay at range and kind of just pick Matt Brown apart. We're seeing that if Matt Brown can't close the distance, especially in his later stages of life, now in his professional fighting career, it's going to be a long night for him. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree 100% with you, Derek. I mean, this is one of those fights that when you read it on paper, you're like, oh, this has to be the second or third time they fought.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, they haven't. Oh, my God. And I think really Dana set this up as hey, guys, like, you guys are both kind of out the door. Let's get one big bloodbath in to really draw the crowd in. First fight of the year, a co-headliner. Like, let's show them how the old school likes to bang it out. And I'm hoping for that. I'm also hoping for a decision, though, because I don't want anyone to get hurt too bad, because, man, these are some old school killers and some real heroes of the sport.
Yes.
I mean, Matt Brown's been doing it since 2008, and I don't have the notes on Carlos Condit, but he's been doing about just as long, if not longer. So these are two real scrappy veterans. Personally, though, I got Condit by decision.
Yep. Sounds about right. Sounds about right there, man. All right, main event time, man. So this is the one we've been waiting for. And personally, I'm really, really excited for this fight simply because I think that there's a lot at stake here, not for both fighters, but I think there's a lot at stake. And I think that Calvin Kattar has been slept on for a very, very long time. So let me open this up, man. We got number 1 ranked Max Holloway facing off against number 6 ranked Calvin Kattar, fighting at the featherweight, weight class. And listen, man, Max Holloway, this to me feels like a lose-lose for him, man, because if he beats Calvin Kattar, well, you were supposed to beat Calvin Kattar. What are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? And if he loses, I honestly believe we're going to start hearing is Max Holloway done? Is he washed? Is he X, Y, and Z? Which is terrible. Dude's not even 30 years old, man. Like, it doesn't even make sense, but because he defended his featherweight championship 4 times, I think people are kind of like, oh, he must be some type of old man. So let's really kick this one off. I was talking about somewhat of clones earlier. These two on paper are legitimately damn near clones, man. So we got Max Holloway, 5'11", Calvin Kattar, 5'11". Max Holloway, 69-inch reach, Calvin Kattar, 72. Okay, we'll give you that. He got a couple inches in the reach, right? Both orthodox. Now, this is what's interesting. Now, on paper, this is why, let me actually go into a quick rant, AJ, man. I hate that you can just look at people's records and people will make a decision off of just looking at a record, right? Because if we're going on paper, Max Holloway, MMA record 21-6-0. Calvin Kattar, MMA record 22-4-0. Arguably, Calvin Kattar has a better record. But you didn't factor in, Max Holloway, he hasn't fought a 3-round fight since like 2016, dude. You know what I mean? He's fought his last 5. Alex Volkanovski twice, Frankie Edgar, Dustin Poirier, Brian Ortega. Like, it's just so crazy to me. Because what I like to do is I'll go your MMA record, then let me look at your UFC record, because that's what really counts, right? Because UFC for Max Holloway, 17-6-0. Dude, that's a whole career in the UFC alone, and then Calvin Kattar, 6-2-0 in the UFC, a lot less impressive. So now that I've laid all of that out, man, these two are not the same, just like the fights that I talked about earlier, but on paper, man, damn near identical, man. So listen, I'm anticipating a kickboxing match between Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar. The question ultimately becomes this. Will his pace be too much for Kattar, or will Kattar's lights out, counter-striking negate Holloway's offensive output, man? So what do you think?
Man, this is an interesting one because no one can really tell. You know what I'm saying? Max Holloway, man, he's one of my favorite fighters, and he really puts it to you. And he's just so inspiring in the cage that when you're fighting him, you almost fight back harder. And I think that's a lot how Brian Ortega made it so long. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? But personally, I don't know. Can Kattar counterpunch and actually hurt Max? That's a great question, because we haven't seen Max actually get hurt that bad.
Well, let me point this out to you. Or you're probably about to say it right now. I was going to say he fought Dustin Poirier a weight class up and didn't even get hurt. Like, I don't know.
Took the words right out of my mouth, Derek. It was insane, because Dustin Poirier, a weight class up at 55, is an absolute savage and will put most anyone on this planet to sleep. Doesn't matter the weight class. Mm-hmm. Super coming up, him and McGregor is going to be absolutely insane. Side note, completely. Yeah. But man, it's the punishment and the heart of Max Holloway. That fight was absolutely impressive. And speaking of the heart of Max Holloway, him and his brain and the way his outlook on life and kind of the joy he brings, I think, is his biggest quality and his biggest pro quality to fighting. Not necessarily his hands and feet, even though those are extremely impressive as well. Can Kattar shut him down? We'll see, because it's going to be impressive. I actually wanted to add this in. You were saying it before, how Kattar, he not too well known in the UFC, or not too long in the UFC, but he was saying in his UFC press conference or pre-fight presser that he feels like he's finally earned it, though. Whereas a lot of other people, we'll see get thrown in, where they get thrown into a big title shot early, haven't necessarily earned it. Derek Lewis comes to mind when he fought DC, but then they have to go back and do all the stuff, where Kattar actually put the time in elsewhere, built up a long, big resume, and then finally got the chances where at least he feels like he deserves it. Because, I mean, the old adage is true. Anything given doesn't have any value. Anything given to you doesn't have any value. Where you got to earn it, you actually feel like you enjoy that necessity or that given, or you know what I'm trying to say. But yeah, what do you think?
Well, listen, man, I want to add on to that. Calvin Kattar has been fighting since 2007 professionally, man. Believe it or not, Calvin Kattar has fought on the same cards as Kimbo Slice. So it's like people don't know that. People don't know he's been around so long. And myself personally, I wasn't very familiar with him until, probably like the past couple of years, man. But listen, this New England cartel camp is deadly, man. These dudes don't play. And the reason why this is a dangerous fight to me is because Max Holloway, he shows you, he'll kickbox you all day long. You know what I mean? Not a problem. And Calvin Kattar, his primary training is boxing, man. He comes from a boxing gym. So it's like, all right, you got two dudes who are really about to start, you know what I'm saying, letting them hands go. And what's beautiful about both of these fighters is they both utilize the body and the head strikes. So for me, the key for this fight is, okay, I actually have two keys for this fight. The key is who's gonna lead the dance, basically, right? Because we see Max Holloway, his whole entire thing is pace. That's like his whole entire game plan. I'm gonna volume strike you up like a Diaz brother, and I'm just gonna outpace you. I'm gonna keep pushing it. Round 4, I'm walking you down. Now Calvin Kattar, he's like literally the same thing. You know what I mean? Except what we saw versus Dan Ige in his last fight, man, round 4 and 5. I'm not gonna say that he got gassed out because I don't believe that, but he got a little more tentative, and maybe because Dan Ige has real pop on his shots. Dan Ige could really knock you out, so he got really tentative, started really picking his shots on that. But ultimately, man, who's gonna lead the dance and who's gonna beat up the body more? So, what do you think for those two questions?
I think the experience of Holloway is going to let him lead the dance a little more. But if it's going to be going who's going to hit the body a little more, I think Kattar might have it. And just having that classic inside boxing technique where he's going to be a little more fluid, where Max is going to mix up a little more kicks, a little more legs, high kicks, low kicks, kind of knees, everything kind of switching it up. But, I mean, man, Kattar does some damage when he does go for the body. So that's what I got. What do you think?
Well, you know what, man? I think that Holloway is, like I said, I just feel like, in honesty, we should be like, dude, Calvin Kattar doesn't stand a chance. Max Holloway is just, like, if you watch his last fight, not many people really think that he lost that fight, man. Like, he should be the champion right now, legitimately. Yeah, me too. He should be the champion. You know what I'm saying? No disrespect to Volkanovski, but they need to run it back for the third time, and they need some neutral judges or whatever the case may be. But ultimately, I do think the body shots are going to favor Holloway unless Kattar makes a concerted effort to strictly beat up the body. And I do think Holloway is going to be able to push the pace because, like you said, man, there's no way to supplement for the experience that Holloway has. He has just way more experience. Yeah, Kattar's been fighting since 2007, but Holloway has fought the best of the best, and he's shown that he could beat him, man, and he can outclass him. Now, this is what it comes down to, man. Kattar, in his last 5, he has 3 knockout wins. Holloway has a TKO over Brian Ortega, but Brian Ortega's so tough he didn't even fall down. So technically, not really a knockout, but we'll count it, I guess. We know Holloway's not a knockout fighter, man. He's not a power puncher. He is a pace. He is a volume strike you to death, right? So that's where things get interesting. We already talked about it earlier. If Poirier couldn't hurt him, I don't see many people that could hurt Holloway, who I do think will be motivated. But I will say this. Calvin Kattar has a real knack for timing and precision. And what did we say before, man? I forget the actual quote, which is terrible. Do you have it?
Yeah. Timing beats power. Oh, man, I read it earlier. I forgot it, too.
You know what I mean? It's like time. It's like, listen, man, precision beats power.
Precision beats power. Timing beats speed.
There we go. Yeah, precision beats power. Timing beats speed. And that's the thing, man. Both of these guys are timing type fighters. So, this should be a pick 'em, but in all honesty, Max Holloway opened up as a -165 favorite, which is actually historically low. Normally, he's always -200 or more. So, like, yeah, go jump in that if the odds are still there. Calvin Kattar +130. I guess it just comes down to this, man. Because listen, everything that we're saying is kind of like, I don't know, man. This is why it's such a great fight, because it's like I don't have any conclusive, like, this is how I feel. So, who do you think is going to win this fight? How and why?
Personally, Derek, I got Max Holloway winning this fight, KO round 4. And I think it's actually more of a statement fight for him because of what we said earlier. He left both the last fights to the judges. First one, I actually think he might have lost it. When it actually went down, I thought he got robbed. Watched it back, not necessarily an okay call. Second fight, 100% robbery, without a doubt in my mind. So I think going forward, the only way for somebody who has, like you said, his legacy is known as just piecing you up, not necessarily putting you to sleep. I think the only way to actually make a statement coming into 2001 is to drop a heavy bomb and say, all this, me calling out DC wanting to fight him at any weight isn't a joke. I really got this power in these hands. I know, and now the blessed era is back, but heavy duty blessed. And I think that's going to be the thing leading forward. And I'm hoping for a fourth round KO knockout. What do you got?
Well, listen, man, I'm not going to say anything popular right now, but there has been. You just saw me talk all the high praises to Max Holloway, and I really think he's an amazing fighter. He should be the champion at 145 right now. There's an aura to New England Cartel right now. You know what I mean? There's something special, something bubbling about that place right now. And I think they're going to build on Rob Font's huge knockout win over Marlon Moraes, man. I think they're going to build on that. I think that's going to be the next camp everybody is going to be talking about, like American Talk Teams and American Kickboxing Academy and stuff. I think that because of the nature of how Max Holloway fights, he is a decision fighter. And you know what they say, man, you never leave it in the hands of the judges. But since that is his fight style, I would not be surprised to see Holloway get robbed again or just, lose out on a very, very close decision because Kattar coming in the most motivated in his entire life. This is literally the biggest shot of his life. This is the championship to him because he's already said it. Most people feel that Holloway is the champ. So if you want to be the champ, you got to beat the champ. And there's no way to beat the champ. No way to be the champ better than beating Max Holloway. Because even if you don't got the strap on you, everyone knows you're the people's champ. You know what I'm saying?
You're the people's champ.
I'm going Calvin Kattar, decision win, New England Cartel on the map. Maybe the Patriots is trash now, but now we got something else in Boston that's about to go crazy. You know what I'm saying? So, listen, we'll see how it goes down, man. Like we said, we're 0-0 to start 2021, man. So you got to risk it to get the biscuit, man. You know what I'm saying? And this is a long shot for me, but nonetheless, man, this is going to be an amazing, amazing card to kick off 2021 for the UFC campaign. And once again, don't forget, we are not covering Fight Island number 8 for Neil Magny versus Michael Chiesa, but we'll be back to cover the big show, the biggest show of the year potentially, and it's only January, Fight Island number 9, Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor number 2. So, AJ, it's been a pleasure. It's been an honor, man. And I will talk to you on fight night. Folks, leave some comments below. Follow us on Verdict. You know the spiel. We 2021. We doing it. We ready to go. Until next time, folks. Peace.